Welcome to Matt Streams. This is going to be a super review, although a super review that's also in progress. So I guess it's a super review in progress, which kind of makes it go back to a normal review because it's one better than a review, but being in progress is one worse. Anyway, this review is of Kingdom Come Deliverance. Now, Kingdom Come Deliverance, as Synthetic Man has talked about, as I guess many people have talked about, although my YouTube fandom, let's not call it that, my YouTube watching tends to be Synthetic Man and then all the other video game people. I hope they talk not much about politics because it's like everybody else is like super left wing, and then you got Synthetic Man where it's like, all right, this is somebody who's kind of talking about the morality of the situation, maybe, rather than Josh Strife Hayes, Tim Rogers, uh, Retrobird, even Happy Console Gamer. He recently made a joke about how everything is called woke these days, and he's like, this water is woke. Um, Pro Jared, AVGN to some extent, Red Cow to some extent, although I love Red Cow. Seemingly Jason Graves to some extent. I love all sorts of video game YouTubers, and Never Knows Best. He's really on the fringes with me. His last video was just unforgivable. Not unforgivable, but the fact that he made a segment about how games aren't necessarily as bad as they used to be, and that go check it for yourself. That entire segment was almost entirely, if not entirely, based around some idea that if we're going to compare Halo 3 and Call of Duty Modern Warfare to modern games, and those being representatives of how games used to be good, then it doesn't stack up well. And it's like, man, you missed the metric of how many games came out a year. You missed the metric of there being a lot of better games than Halo 3 and Modern Warfare 1 or 2 or whatever you picked. Like literally a Call of Duty game and a non-Halo 1 or Halo 2 Halo game, and you're saying those are like the most beloved games and those are what you're implying that those are the kinds of games people are pointing to. No, I'll give you Devil May Cry. I'll give you Devil May Cry 3. I'll give you God of War. Maybe God of War 2. I'm not an expert. God of War 3 maybe. I think Synth likes God of War 3. I'll give you Time Splitters. I'll give you Time Splitters 2. I'll give you, and if I keep, I'll give you Virtua Fighter 4. I'll give you Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution. I'll give you Gran Turismo 3. I'll give you Gran Turismo 4. I'll give you Sly Cooper. I'll give you Jack and Daxter. I'll give you Jack 2. I'll maybe even give you Jack 3. I'll give you Ratchet and Clank. I'll give you Ratchet and Clank 3. I'll probably give you Ratchet and Clank 2 because I'm sure it was good, but I played the first and third. I'll even give you Ratchet Deadlocked, which even back then it was like, this is the super spin-off, you might not want to play it, Ratchet game. Even that is more exciting and fresh than the shit you get nowadays. But to return to what Never Knows Best did, he just spent basically 5 minutes saying, well, if Call of Duty 3 and, if Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1 or 2, whatever it was, and Halo 3 are the games you would point to, then I could point you to footage over and over again of Shigeru Miyamoto playing We Dance or whatever as how games used to be bad too. And that's another part of the argument. Sorry, Never Knows Best. People aren't saying there weren't bad games. People talk about bad games from the past all the time, but people are just saying there were a lot of good games too, and a lot of good games, sort of a massive amount of them. And if you're just pointing to two of them, and two ones that probably aren't on many people's favorite lists at all, favorites lists, and you're saying that these are somehow representative, and the fact that these two aren't that much better than what's coming out recently, and there were only two of them, it's like, man, you could have picked like 15 games a year. I'd say 2010 and beforehand, you could have picked 15 fucking games a year or more that were like, quality releases that people were excited about, that felt fresh, that felt good, that didn't have a lot of, malicious stuff where you buy the game and then they have ads for new characters or ads for new DLC or all sorts of shit in the game. And they make the game seemingly with that in mind, as I'm sure you've said, Never Knows Best. Therefore, they seem to make the games they seem to basically hollow out the games, and then where you'd be, hollow out is a good term, where you'd be unlocking characters or actually playing the game to get stuff and to get new stuff. It's like, hey, you can buy this character or you have basically all the characters unlocked from the beginning because that's all you're going to get. And there's no other reward for playing this fighting game other than playing it. And it's like, sure, that's fine. But it's like, man, you used to be able to unlock a shitload of stuff. Now that's called DLC, and it's called extra charges and ads every time you fucking pick a character on your character select screen in the game that you already paid money for. And Never Knows Best, they didn't do that back in the day. Not a lot. I'm sure you could point to some PC games. In fact, I imagine you did in that video. I think I watched that whole damn video. It wasn't even that long for his videos. I like his longer ones, but anyway, like, I'm sure you could look at some PC games, and you did with DLC, like Sims Living Large and stuff. Well, I'll tell you what, I wasn't a big fan of that either. When Living Large came out, I remember that particularly. It was like, wait a second. So it's not a new game? You have to have the first game, and yet you're paying for it like a new game, but it's... and I just kind of stayed away from that stuff. But now everything is like partially that and partially the blandest shit you've ever seen. So sorry, Never Knows Best. But you still make my list of like YouTubers that I'll look at what you just posted. But you've gotten so fucking political, and you've gotten to the point where you're literally, probably despite the right wingers or whatever, you're literally making arguments that, like, because you can point to two pretty good games, that means that the games now aren't as bad as the games back then. Is that your whole argument? Because you could point to two pretty good games, and then you could point to a few bad games with some cringy quote-unquote stage moments with the creator of Mario. That means that games now aren't worse. It's like that's such a non-argument. It's like, and you're picking such bad examples too, because it's like, nobody even thought that, like, fuck, We Dance was going to be, like, a good game. That's another aspect of it. Nobody fucking thought that game was going to be good. I mean, I doubt it anyway. Like, who's interested in, like, dancing games on the Wii? Probably very few people. So the fact that, like, that was one of the cruxes as well, that seems to split the opposite way, where it's like, shit, if that's the most meaningful game, or one of the most meaningful games you can point to multiple times to show how games used to be bad too, then it's like, man... it doesn't seem like there were that many bad games back then, because at least that one's kind of fucking quirky. Like, at least we get a fucking Miyamoto dancing segment with that. I might want to play that more than, like, any of the big name games that came out last year, which I don't know if that's an exaggeration. And it's like, well, Matt, that's just you. It's like, hey, maybe it's just me, and also I can make a bunch of good arguments, and also I could list you a bunch of really good games that are not Halo 3 or Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1 or 2 or whatever it was. I can list you a bunch of shit, and I can point to a bunch of people who also feel the same, and I could point to a whole section of YouTube where people are talking about almost nothing but retro games, and sometimes they'll pull out new shit, but they really light up with the retro shit. Like, I can point to all sorts of shit, and these aren't solid arguments, but these are some pieces of evidence, and I could make a whole fucking video about it, refuting and saying that games are worse now than they were back then. Although Synth has made a whole fucking career out of doing that, but he's taken it sort of bit by bit. You know, I think someone might be able to make a good overview video about that. Anyway, let's get on with the Kingdom Come Deliverance. Yeah, so Synth, I look forward to seeing his video, or your video if you ever watch this. That would be fucking cool. And otherwise, I don't know if I ever want to listen to anyone talk about the Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 or 1, because I bet you they're going to glaze over a bunch of shit, unlike Synth, and even if I really like their stuff otherwise. Excellent. Hey guys, so this is the first time I'm booting up Kingdom Come Deliverance 1, not 2.
It is here that my story begins.
Oh. He'll probably point some of it out in the review he ends up making. But I've been watching Synthetic Man play Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and it's the most occult thing I've ever seen. One of your quest lines is, as it's told to you, you're helping a man build a golem, and he's a guy who tells you what true alchemy is, real alchemy, whatever. He's the guy who talks about Hermes Trismegistus. He's the guy who literally name drops J blank W blank SH Cabal. Like, he says that. That's in a fucking screenshot that I saw Synthetic Man playing of it. He talks about that kind of cabal, and I think he says, like, he learned from that, and he's talking about doing alchemy, and then, of course, another person you meet on that quest is named Ignatius, and he's one of a couple Ignatius NPCs, maybe more, that I've seen on Synth's playthrough. It's like, this stuff is not just a cult, but it's a cult where it's like, somebody either spent a little time watching Zachary K. Hubbard and looking into Mark Passio and Alan Watt and stuff, maybe, Matt McKinley or something, and then they made a game, or seemingly more likely, because the game is pushing a lot of the basic propaganda that we get everywhere else in society, somebody who already knew about all those elements is putting all those elements in the game along with the propaganda, such as you might hear about in the protocols of the Elders of Zion, along with the propaganda that you get to destroy the masses. And so apparently, though, this game is a big, bright contrast to that one's propaganda. And then the second game, they throw in like a lot of this occult knowledge, like they literally name drop like occult figures, Hermes Trismegistus, blank Cabal. They talk about real alchemy, which is related to Hermes, Ignatius, and then the second Ignatius is a ram. It's the name of a ram, like an actual animal ram character. Kind of satanic, isn't it? And it's just like seriously, all these things are too specific to be like accidentally put together like this. Like he's basically telling you about the Kybalion and stuff. Like, it's too specific to just be by accident, I think it looks like. And then it's also too much propaganda in the game for it to seem like somebody who's like a truther and who is pushing against like the bad stuff in society to put this in the game. So it basically seems like it's the same propaganda you're getting from everywhere. I'm not Fritz. Look, they know you by name. That's pretty fucking cool.
God save you, Henry.
Hey, charcoal burner's helper. You look like Tom Green a little bit. Okay, let's go. Gambler.
Hose! Get the best right here.
Are you Fritz? Traitor. I like how they put the names in the bottom right corner. So it's sort of like an Eckhart Tolle thing where it's like, they're not putting the name right in your face. They're literally putting the name in the part of the screen that, like, they say people look at the least. The bottom right corner, I think it is. Villager. Oh, okay. So, to talk about occultism, because I said we were going to, we've already got some occultism here. Now, it doesn't mean it's not historically accurate, but if you read Cutting Through by Alan Watt, I'm into volume 2 out of 3 of it. He talks about and emphasizes that robes, like robes, kilts, I don't know what he would say of kilts, but probably similar. Robes are not just like, oh, it's a man thing. Like, no, robes are wearing dresses. Like, you wear a gown, you wear a woman's dress in a graduation. Like, priests wear robes, priests wear women's clothing. Like, robes. And so it's just with it goes along with sort of like the Freemasonic agenda and like kind of stuff, at least as according to like I've looked into it, that seems to be the case. And so this woman's wearing a robe because she's a woman, and then this guy's wearing a robe because he's wearing a fucking dress. I mean, he's wearing pants, but see, I guess if his top shirt comes down like that, it still looks kind of dressy, you know. It looks like a short dress a woman might wear. Which makes it even kind of funnier, actually, really. Really.
Just listen and you'll hear for yourself.
Yeah, you guys seem like fucking idiots, actually. Alright. Give me a lockpick, man. Give me a lockpick!
What? Do you want to do it? Be my guest. It gives me no pleasure.
You can't kill him. I have orders to take him to Ratai.
Here's your lockpick. Sir Radzig of Kabbalah, your patron and the man who becomes your father figure. That is Kabbalah, K-O-B-Y-L-A, pronounced.
My master does not wish this man to fall into the wrong hands, especially those of Radzik Kobila.
Sir Radzik Kobila.
How you doing?
I'm in the service of Sir Radzik Kobila.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Hey, dude. Most times, Kabbalah. Editing Matt here. As you can see with those 3 pronunciations, Radzig's last name is not necessarily mostly pronounced Kabbalah. But as you can see with Henry saying it, Henry does, at least at one point, and I would I would wager every point, he does pronounce it Kabbalah. Like Kabbalah, with just a slightly different twist. And what is Kabbalah? The mystical study of Hebrew texts for spiritual advice, wisdom, and even numerology and stuff. Very occult stuff. And of course, he would be the father that takes over after your father dies. How about another one?
My dream! You were in a boat made of bone, and I put a crown of thorns on your head.
Tell me about your dream. Let's hear it.
All right. Tell me about this dream.
All right.
That dream.
Oh, and a wreath there. Okay. Ooh, that's interesting. Maybe interesting symbolism. You got like a cloud pattern up here above the quadrilateral. It is a rectangle. Well, it's kind of a bit of a misshapen one in terms of saying this is exactly a rectangle with 90-degree angles. It's like, is that really a 90-degree angle? Let's see. These little things are... Oh, you know what? Very interesting. These little things look like the curls associated with certain like types of... How does one put this? How does one put... funny enough, how does one put this in a way that doesn't sound like insulting or like mocking, but just like neutral? These curls, these little tassels, I guess, they look kind of like curls that certain people of like a religious order might be associated with having. And, or like a certain, I guess like Hasidic people of the Jewish faith might be associated with having certain curls like this. And they're actually, interestingly enough, they are kind of placed on this rectangle where I think on someone's head, roughly, their curls might be coming from. I think they're probably a little low. But yeah, I don't know if that's accidental. I think there might be something there. And then it would be like a rectangle here, which is sort of like the idea of like the square cap you wear during a graduation ceremony when you're also wearing the women's clothing, the robes, whether you're a woman or a guy. And you have the square on top of your round cap. The round cap with the square top. And that's sort of like, you know, you are graduating. Like you are graduating, maybe you are even getting a degree, like literally a degree, which I think is apparently on some level, I think it is like actually a Masonic degree. Like, so I have a Bachelor of Arts degree. I think actually technically it's like I heard somewhere, maybe it's not, but I think on some level it is, at least in the tradition of Masonic degrees. You know, maybe sometime in the back it truly was like you had to be a Mason to go to college. I don't know about that, but I heard that it is, they call it a degree, and I hear that it is in some more actual way than just the word similarity. It is associated with Freemasonry, I hear. Anyway, so this is interesting because it's sort of like they are squaring your head like the, you know, the square and compass, like they are squaring your head like the top of the graduation cap. Like you are now a square, like you have now been squared off and you now fit as a block into society. Or like into some kind of, in some way, like you have now been sort of shaped. So their head is, if this is supposed to represent a head in some way, the head is shaped like that. Also, the clouds are above it, as if the head is in the clouds. And here's some kind of wreath, which also might be seen as some kind of like Caesar thing. So this could represent sort of the quote-unquote blockheaded, to criticize it. I'm not criticizing it here, but I'm saying it might be a critical thing. Perhaps symbolic of the quote-unquote blockheaded religious person who has their head in the clouds and has some kind of, you know, social or cultural authority about them. And another? What's that?
Assurances? How about this? If you talk, I'll spare you.
Do you expect me to believe that? I know full well how these stories end. I have been at the other end of the sword more times than you can count.
I give you my word.
The word of a thief? Jesus. It is true what the preachers say. This world has gone quite mad. You had better kill me. I'm finished, anyway. Just as you are.
Wow. Wow, he said basically like we're corrupted.
Why do you think I'm finished?
He who lives by the sword dies by the sword.
That's the story of this whole game.
Once you take a weapon in your hand, your days are numbered.
Yep.
It is the same for every one of us.
Not everyone.
Every last one. Knight, mercenary, or footpad. There are men who die peacefully in bed.
And another. Sort of twisting and spiraling beard. He looks sort of Zeus-like, but then he's grabbing the coattail of this guy who has a halo and a sword, and he's kind of smiling, as seems to be his horse, and like turning back to attack him. Also, he's leaving like the royal castle here, so that appears to be perhaps symbolic of like leaving civilization, basically perhaps like symbolic of leaving the rule of just some man, even a man who styles himself as Zeus, essentially for freedom from the idea that that man would have any actual authority. Which would go along with the Christian conceptions of, well, at least with the quote, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, render unto God that which is God's, which is like, I've thought about this. I've thought about this as a money thing. But generally though, like it seems to be like essentially just like saying Caesar is separate from God, like that, or at least that's sort of like that seems to be part of the message there, even if it's not the part of the message that that might be behind the sentence being spoken in the first place in some sense. But it is there, like he's basically saying that which is Caesar's, I'd say that is Caesar's actually, which should be used for dependent clauses. Anyway, that which is Caesar's is set apart from that which is God's, and so it's saying like what is Caesar's is not what is God's. And thus, it seems to also be in the realm of like Caesar does not represent God, or like what represents Caesar does not necessarily represent God. And so it would make sense that a guy who has a halo would be going off away from the city and away from the rule of Caesar, and he'd be smiling, and even his horse would be smiling, like almost like, and the rocks shall cry out, or maybe more like, and the wolf. Believe it or not, it says wolf now. I don't know if it always said that, but if you go back to an old Bible, it will probably have it'll probably appear to say wolf now. But anyway, wolf, the wolf shall lie with the lamb. It's like basically, even the vicious beasts seemingly like they will themselves become kind of friendly, with essentially basically like a great sweeping of love over the earth in some way or something. It's like that's what you do when you get away from the civilization, from the city. This cross in a field is inverted. Let me explain.
Hey, who's there?
I'm here. And look, the cross design as we go up. I don't know if that's necessarily intentionally there to be a cross, because it's like, it's sort of just paths crossing. Although that said, what? How many of those cross paths do they have? They only have one. Look at that. And actually, since the hill is slanted down, well, I think this is kind of fucking occult. Since the hill is slanted down, they have literally one place where the openings at least slightly overlap. Oh, wait, no. Yeah, no, this is it. They have literally one place where there's literally a path between fenced-off areas, and that this fenced-off, or mostly fenced-off area intersects with. And so, but it's only one. And then otherwise, this one goes back unbroken by, like, you know, properly fenced off areas except at the very end. So there's no one after this to make another cross with it. And then it's a shorter path down that way where the same thing happens. So there is literally, going down this hill, as you'll see right now, there is literally one specific cross made out of the fencing. And that specific cross in this area is on the closer side to the bottom, meaning that it is a long, upside-down cross. Upside down in the sense that it's going down the hill. However, it's right side up. Look at this in the sense, or mostly, although maybe a little slant, a little crooked actually, in the sense that we are going almost due north. And so we are going south to north and the cross seems to be right side up. But the hill is slanting clearly downward. And so in the sense of like up and down, the cross is actually inverted here. So for instance, if you were to go down to this part of it and then look up, if you were to consider this just sort of slanting down at an angle down the hill, then it would literally be... Fuck, I'll get off the fucking horse to look at it. If you were to consider this slanting down at an angle, like say from here, then it literally might be like actually up and down that the cross is, and it's just been slanted very far down, almost horizontal, but not. But in any case, yeah, this would be an upside down cross if you were going up and down, you know, not compass wise, but up and down just like from where you're standing. And again, since the hill is sort of, you know, slanting up and slowly drifting up, that means that literally you could say that since it's not totally level on the ground, you could say that this is literally kind of like almost a standing upside down cross made out of the pattern of these wooden fences, or these fence posts anyway, and that it's like just, it's literally being raised off the ground by the hill, but only so far off the ground.
Anything else?
This series of candles in a church where you go to meet a group of local thugs hiring mercenaries is shaped like, well... Yeah, here we go. So the guys, the thugs are here, probably. Here you go. This is a pyramid, though. It's literally candles in a church shaped in a pyramid shape. I might write down this time. Hold on. And I've noticed this before. This is a pyramid of church candles, and what does the pyramid signify in occultism? But, you know, well, organizational structures, of course, but that's just pyramids in general, like conceptually. But I mean, like, you know, the pyramids are highly related to occultism. And you got the square on the bottom as well. We talked about the square in the last stream. And, but it's going up to a pyramid. Now, is the dollar bill pyramid, does that have a square at the bottom? I think it might be like it's like a trilateral prism, or what? A trilateral prism versus a quadrilateral prism? Is that what it is? This appears to... I don't know. I think this might be with a square at the bottom on the dollar bill. It looks like it might be. So yeah, that'd be even better symbolism if this like matches the shape on the dollar bill that has the all-seeing eye. And look, on the top, you have a candle on the top with the flame. The flame's like the all-seeing eye. Yeah, I believe this is fucking Kingdom Come, Deliverance, Occultism. And... oh, that is the fucking total Baphomet. Check the lighting on the top, the bottom leftmost you know, well, not square, the bottom leftmost rectangle on that like altar set of images, not the wall next to it, but the one that's kind of lit up, and the two people, if you look between them, now that I'm looking at it the other way, it kind of looks like one of those, like, is it the old woman or the rabbit pictures, or the old woman or the young woman, or old quote unquote whatever. Nothing like that though. It's actually, well, it's kind of like that. If you look at the people, it's maybe less easy to see the Baphomet. But look, that's the fucking Baphomet. Check out for reference. In fact, I'll show it to you for reference so that we have it on this fucking stream. Check out this for reference. Hold on. Yeah, all right, guys. Oh, fuck. Oh. I knocked over a thermos or mug type thing. Travel mug. Okay. Check this out. Okay, look. And I have this, I'm literally not like a dark occultist. I have this for research. But check this out. Look. And then compare it to the shape over there. This is sort of like the goat's head, downward facing, with the curling horns at the top, which you often see. Like, you actually see that in like the quote-unquote Baphomet statue. But like, this is sort of that, but in the downwards pentagram. By the way, the upwards pentagram is just what's on the flag. It's a bunch of pentagrams without circles, and I actually have a Oh my god, what is happening?
You're a traitor.
The world is not so black and white, boy.
The 88 is also a number commonly associated with certain political groups from the 1900s that are unsavory to our society and seemingly set up as some kind of historical monster for us to all take reference from. Just as a little sidebar here, I consider all control organizations that use force to push others around generally to be monstrous groups from whenever and wherever they roamed. So I wouldn't necessarily consider any historical group, especially if they had a lot of power, which sort of doubles in the sense that they would also potentially be pushing some kind of agenda. Yeah, I don't consider any of these big political groups to generally or necessarily be good, and usually I would say they are by definition actually immoral. They are immoral to begin with because usually they rely on a monopoly on force to begin with. Anyway, the 88 appearing on the shield of a guard in the game associated with being full of white people rather than given kind of an American plus dispersal of other ethnicities instead of game designers focusing on who would be where, well, this game doesn't have that, in that it's set in 15th century Bohemia, so everyone would be white. Let's look at the symbolism. We sort of have sun symbolism with the circular, yellowish, branches here, or branch. We have kind of Ouroboros symbolism a little bit, with kind of like the snake eating its tail, except it's not really, because then it's sort of like a double Ouroboros where it's going back out again, and it has two tails. These look like eyes, by the way. These little black things. I guess they're sort of like nails or... And that's part of the game's dynamic, along with the Christian elements, quote-unquote, in quotes, because it's not a Christian game. You save with Savior Schnapps, for God's sake. There is no way that is not mockery. They've been mocking Christianity the entire time, right down to the prayer book of classic prayers that has one to a local lord, capitalized because they want to emphasize the anti-Christian element of calling every man in this game your lord when he has more social status than you. And the other prayer is, well... Saint Wenceslas. Is he a real saint? Saint Wenceslas. Saint Wenceslas, ruler of Bohemia. God, our prince, interceder for... I'm not reading this out as a prayer. I'm reading this as something in the... but let's see what this other prayer is. And so it's sort of like, kind of biting satire on not Christianity, but sort of like fake Christianity. Prayer to Saint Wenceslas. And perhaps some sense of like Christianity being tied with the local monarchy. So perhaps it's a satire on the concept in the sense that they might be suggesting that the whole religion is basically just some way to get people to worship their local lords or behave for them by proxy or something. I'm not saying that, but It seems like that might be what they're saying about the religion here. I don't know. Okay. Lord, have mercy on us. And here might be some kind of a real prayer. And remember, they said like these are classic prayers or something. Let's go back and see that again. Lord, have mercy on us. Lord, have mercy on us. Jesus Christ, have mercy on us. Savior of the whole world, have mercy on us and hear. O Lord, our voices. Lord, give to all of us life and peace in our land. Kyrie eleison. I don't know what that is. Kyrie eleison. Anyway, that sounded similar to some of the stuff in one of my rosary books. Okay, so yeah, Saint Wenceslas, ruler of Bohemia, our prince, intercede for us with God, the Holy Spirit. Kyrie eleison, heavenly the beautiful kingdom, blessed is he who cometh there, life eternal, fire bright. By the way, I like again to note it. I like how the jumbled text. If you don't know what the word is, and you're kind of guessing, you sort of sound like someone who's kind of guessing what a word is, not because they don't know of the word, or if they do, it's more of like a childlike thing of this is maybe kind of a normal word, but it's not a word they know yet. So we're kind of back in sort of a childlike position of like, guessing what the word is, except they'd still be able to sound it out if they knew how to read well, probably. So it's sort of like them kind of guessing at the sounds, and it's like, well, do you know the sounds or not, right? Maybe part of it is a confidence thing. But with this, I actually don't know what the word even is. Whereas when a kid is reading something, if it's spelled correctly, generally, although not always, it sounds the way it's spelled. So them like guessing what it sounds like, it's sort of like, well, are you guessing how to read or do you know how to read? Maybe they're like, I don't know. Maybe they're not. It's like how are you not sure what sounds these indicate, Unless it's like a G, like a G or a J, Which it might be in some cases, or emphases on words or something. Other elements of Kingdom Come, 1, come off as just straight left-wing propaganda. This is the first game we're talking about, guys. From the constant focus on refugees and immigration through the guise of Henry's town being raided and mostly slaughtered, or somewhat, and the rest becoming disliked immigrants, not migrants. People immigrate, they do not migrate, unless they are some kind of wanderers maybe, but in that case, why don't migrants ever migrate back in a local town? Where you spend almost every dialogue tree wading through options about how the immigrants are perceived, thus placing in your mind the idea that refugees and immigrants, even if the townspeople have legitimate complaints about their increasing the population overnight to what the controllers themselves demonized as cramped quarters through books like The Limits of Growth put out by the legit organization the Club of Rome, and yet never question when it's your town getting flooded by what they would deem useless eaters. Why? Well, that's the question. But in this game, it's all immigrants good, and when you see an economic opportunist, you just think of Henry of Skalitz. As in, you would potentially be programmed by this game to, on some level, equate the idea of refugees and packed towns of recent entries with the plight of a boy who lost his parents in a brutal world, rather than, maybe, someone who can make more money over here. And on the other front, you have a long storyline and one of the most annoying segments of the game being a quest to cure a plague in a local town. Except, in a massive possible truth drop, this game that came out 2 years before the coronavirus stuff, imagine that, with The Last of Us, couldn't be predictive, has every single person in that town not actually be sick, but just be poisoned from a well. A concept also floated in the blacklist as the real reason in some way for a virus, quote unquote. In that case, in that show, venom. But in this case, just a poisoned well. And yet, what do you remember? A plague storyline, because they basically gloss over the real culprit. And you might go away thinking, well, that was a harsh plague. There's actually another part in the game where a man associated with maybe local counterfeiting is sick home from work, except that guy is There's actually another part in the game where a man associated maybe with local counterfeiting is sick home from work, except the guy talking about it says he's probably just hungover or something, and he is actually neither. Another sick guy in the game, that the game tells you is not sick. Truth drops, massive. And yet, as with other kinds of mind control, probably, you go away from it thinking, well, there was a lot of plagues in that game, a lot of sick people. But as the game has fulfilled its purpose, potentially, of getting you to think about plagues and sicknesses to set you up, maybe, for a big time in the world, it also tells you directly and literally that no one actually got sick, and it was all just bullshit. A big misunderstanding that was actually set up through foul play. Up through foul play. But nobody got sick. Nobody was sick. Anyway, another element of the game is infidelity, with Henry potentially sleeping with a local married lady who tells you she basically married for politics, and she is with an infirm man to some extent. And so you sleep with her, as I did, not knowing that it was that imminent, and wondering if all her dialogue had been, as it seemed it might have been, just me taking certain sentences as metaphors. No, they were. LOL. Anyway, you also have a lot of dealings with the bathhouse, even if you don't go to their brothel for those services. The game has you going through women and taking bounties from them. Basically, you could say Memento, but I have Bianca's ring and shirt from Stephanie without trying. The game is very much not Christian in its blatant sexuality, which matches real life perhaps in some ways, and perhaps the time period, where both the executioner and the bathhouses are often set up outside of town. Anyway, yeah. So, okay. Maybe if I talk to him again, it's going to do something. Oh, that's the actual overseer. Okay. Well, this is the guy, not his hand. We want to talk to him.
Jesus Christ be praised.
Okay.
I'm looking for some quicksilver. Would you have any on hand?
Talk to my assistant. He deals with such trivial matters.
Fine, thank you.
No, I talked to him already.
It was young Smoller.
Zamala.
What?
Oh, this is about
Smoller's
the other
one
thing.
responsible for all the thefts and death. He tried to kill me and Leszek and God knows who else.
Sweet Jesus. Where is he now?
Dead. I killed him in self-defense.
So is that the end of it, do you think?
It looks that way. Leszek was helping him, but he's dead.